Welcome everybody to Eye the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card reading. Today's pick a card reading is all about what intimidates and or fascinates others about you. And the inspiration for this really has come from the fact that I've seen a number of other tarot readers on YouTube doing the topic of what intimidates others about you. And I really wanted to look at that and explore it myself, but marry it with fascinates as well, because to me there's sort of two sides of the same coin. They are both things that can either draw people to us under certain circumstances or push people away, and they both have positive and negative aspects. So if you are someone who can intimidate others, sometimes it's a sign that you're exceptionally good at certain things that you do, you're top of your field, top of your class. It can be that you are someone that people look up to be able to take on a battle or a cause. It can be that you're ready to psych out someone in a competition and that's necessary for success. So there are various elements in which that is a very positive thing. But equally, when you intimidate others, you may push people away who you want to be close to you. People may be frightened of you and you may not be aware of it, and you may have absolutely no intention of doing that. Similarly with fascination, it's wonderful to be fascinating, attractive, charismatic, all of those things. It can be an incredible boost to your career, to your personal brand, to your love life, to your friendship circle, all of those sort of things if you have that really incredibly fascinating and attractive personality and or charisma. But on the other side, when you have charisma or that level of fascination to a very high degree, sometimes you can have people drawn to you that are needy or obsessive or that want your attention just for them and not for anybody else. So it can also bring complications. And certainly I've seen throughout my life, some of the more highly charismatic people I've known have had quite complicated relationships sometimes. So there's positives and negatives to this. I think we tend to think it would be great to be, really someone that stands out in these ways, and in many ways it can be, but it can also have its challenges. So I wanted to look at both those aspects. I wanted to start looking at some of the archetypes that you might exude to others, even if you don't know it, and what that might mean in terms of intimidation and or fascination. And then delve into more detail with that and get Spirit's advice about how to either nuance and increase something that's working well for you, or to limit or recalibrate something that isn't. So that's the topic for today. As always, I'm going to ask you to tune in and decide which pile, which reading draws to you. To help with that, I have the chakra placement stone. So on pile 1, I have the root chakra stone. On pile 2, the solar plexus. And on pile 3, the throat chakra. As I always say, when I use chakra placement stones, that does not mean those are the energies for these readings. I don't know what cards are there or what cards will come up. I always film the introduction before I do the readings. But I thought that energies around who we really are at our base, our sense of self and self-actualization and the way we communicate are energies that in combination may be important to this reading, hence why I chose those stones. And hopefully they may help you choose which pile, or if you want to go to more than one pile, if you're drawn to more than one, that's perfectly fine too. Whichever works for you, hopefully they will help. Otherwise, you may have other ways tuning in. You may want to pause the video and contemplate whatever works for you. When you know the reading or readings you want to go to, the timestamps are in the description box below, and I'll see you there. Welcome pile 1 to your reading. Over here we have some of the cards that were with these cards under the chakra placement stone. You chose to come here. We'll get to those later. There's also some oracles that I want to shuffle, because what question I'll ask of the oracle will depend upon how this reading works, what actually comes out in it. So these cards, these archetype cards, are meant to give me a sense about what are the sort of qualities of you that are possibly either intimidating or fascinating or both other people. And there's certainly a combination of both here. You come across as someone who is very, very successful. Now, some of you may literally be a CEO or somebody who has a position of leadership in an organization, or you may run your own business, or you may be an entrepreneur. There could be something like that literally in what you do in your career. If not, the archetype is there, someone who is a natural leader, who can make decisions quickly, who gets on with things and knows how to take something from its early stages through to being realized. And that will have many people that will follow you. It's many people will look up to you for decisions and for answers. But also, as is usually the case, it's a bit like that saying that uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. There is that sense that sometimes you won't always hear the truth from people. People may be a little bit concerned about whether or not you're going to like what they say. You could, at its worst version, have people who are yes people around you who feel that they have to just agree with everything you say. And that doesn't mean that's what you want. In fact, part of the intention of this reading is to try and excavate what might be coming across from you that you don't necessarily want or you might not be aware of. And this will be particularly the case, I think, for pile 1 if you're not in a standard leadership role. If you've been in a standard one or you're in one, you'll know what I'm talking about already here, where getting that information, getting that wise counsel and so forth can be tricky. So that may be something that we'll see more of depending on what tarot talks about. But certainly you fascinate people with your leadership qualities, but you also intimidate them a bit. People do really see you as someone who's the boss, or a boss, as people talk about. I think you also come across as incredibly romantically open, somebody who does admire others. Now, I think that's a really good combination there. I think as if you are a leader, then you're also seen as somebody who sees, admire, and not necessarily here I'm talking about in terms of romance, I'll get to that, but in terms of things around work or study, you see what other people have, and you may be an incredibly good coach or mentor for people that you definitely see and admire others. You're not threatened by other people. You're not someone who gets intimidated easily, to be honest, and people see that. They see that you are quite self-actualized, you know who you are. Therefore, you can admire others without feeling that somehow diminishes you in some way. So there's that aspect, and I think people are fascinated by that. I think you may find sometimes people look at you and go, okay, that's what it means to be self-actualized. That's what it means to be confident. You may find sometimes that people almost try and copy you rather than be their authentic self, and you want to admire the authentic self. So I'm just raising these things to say this is the shadow as well as the positive around this. You are definitely seen as a leader. You're seen as a collaborative leader. And that is, as I say, whether or not you're in a leadership role. You're also seen as highly romantic and somebody who does put love as an important thing, and is, maybe you're even seen as someone who's looking for the right person at the moment, because with the star-crossed energy here, you may have had difficult relationships in the past. You may have wanted someone and there's been some sort of barrier, some sort of almost material barrier. You know, the star-crossed sense is always that people coming from different cultures, or it's difficult because one is already committed to somebody, or there's always that kind of sense of difficulty. So I think that you may come across as someone who is looking for the one, but who almost expects there to be difficulties, or even someone who is watching someone from afar because there is a star-crossed energy around. It's highly romantic. So I do think that you fascinate people by that sense of romance and commitment to love. But there's something in there that's potentially a barrier. It may be, for some of you, it's literally because you're a leader and somebody, you know, it's a rival company, or it's somebody who's working for you, so it's complicated. So maybe there's that sense where people see the love that you have for somebody, or the love that you want to share, but also that for some reason it's difficult to bring that into being. There's always other things involved. This also gives me the sense of sort of someone who may be with their work or something like that away a lot. So it's hard, you know, you're traveling a lot, you're doing a lot, you're out on campaigns. It almost feels like military campaigns. And so you want love, but there's always something else that potentially gets in the way. And I think that fascinates people about you, because they see you as someone who should be in a very settled relationship, but possibly they don't see that, or they are projecting all this on you. The issue you may have is that you are a very romantic figure for people, and they're projecting their own desires upon you, particularly as they see you as someone who is an up-and-comer and they really want to connect and have that power couple type of thing. So the good side is, I think people see you as loving, caring, romantic, successful, self-actualized, and that fascinates them. The difficult side is the power that you inherently have, and potentially something about how you come across emotionally or how people project on you might be a bit tricky. So let's use tarot, and let's ask Spirit first of all a little bit more information. Let's delve into a little bit more about what these archetypes are and anything else Spirit wants to say about what you have within you that intimidates or fascinates others. Okay, so I do think this is picking up very much the same sort of overall sense as this does. It's maybe giving me a little bit more clarity, particularly about this aspect. But to start with, clearly, again, King of Wands, you're highly charismatic. That's part of your romantic appeal. Whether you're aware of it or not, you really are. And people really do see you as someone who should be a leader in your field, you know, should be the CEO, should be the first person, the alpha. It's like, yeah, that's the energy of this, the alpha in the group, the person that people sort of see in that way. And part of that is because you give such a sense of hope to people. They are fascinated by your positivity. You're someone, even when there is adversity, and it looks to me like particularly around relationships there might have been, even when that is the case, you remain positive. You are always, you know, keeping to your North Star. You're moving in a very determined way. I'm getting that for some of you, even right back from school, college, university, you've always had eye on the prize. You know what you want, you know how to go after it, and you go after it. And people find that intimidating, but they find it fascinating as well too. And I feel that they're more fascinated than intimidated for the most part about that. It's more that they want to be like you than that they're scared of you. But having said that, they do look up to you a lot. So that does potentially have issues with some relationships, particularly as I say that I think you're highly romantic. Again, we've got the Knight of Cups. You're also someone who I believe really admires others. I think you might find it a bit perplexing sometimes that you want to have a friendship with someone you find really fascinating, or even more than a friendship potentially, and then before you know it, it goes into this sort of pattern where they're looking up to you, or they're seeing you as the person to be like, or even mimicking you. I have a very strong sense of mirroring around this, that people have determined, okay, that's what success looks like. That's what being true to yourself looks like. That's what being authentic looks like. And they're kind of missing the point, and you really want them to be true to who they are because you want what's different. You're happy in yourself, so therefore you want what's different, and you want that heart connection. But I do feel as though you may have been on your own for quite a while, or you may have been separated because of differences with the star-crossed thing there from somebody, or you've been in a relationship where for all that you have all of this, there's been something where you felt that you still had to stand separate within it, that something wasn't quite gelling, that something felt a little bit embattled sometimes. So the overarching feeling I get about this pile one is that possibly that you've been in a relationship, or you're around a relationship at the moment where this imbalance, where there's a kind of a looking up to you, fascination with you, is separating you in a way that you don't want to be separated. It's like almost having a fan rather than a lover, or a friend, if this is about friendship. But with Starcross, I feel like it's probably much more around romance. So I think that energy, I think that Spirit is saying that you are highly charismatic and highly successful. You are a very positive individual, and that is wonderful, but you want to find an equal. And you may well have done. I'm not necessarily getting from this that if there's someone around you and you're having this issue that you haven't, but it might be nuancing that a little bit so that the person can understand that they are a peer, they are not a follower. Because you really admire this person if there's someone there at the moment. And if there isn't at the moment, this may be a pattern you've come across where there's always seemed to be some inherent difficulty that keeps you separate, either within a relationship or more generally. And some of it all revolves around, I think, who you are and how you come across in the world. So let's ask Spirit for a little bit more information about what impact this is having on you, and what advice Spirit would give you to nuance this, move, work with it to get the best outcome for you. Okay, so this is very much, I think Spirit is very much saying you are the sort of person who could potentially have people, as I say, get fascinated, get a bit obsessed with you. One of the things that Spirit is saying is that your highly romantic nature could bind you up in some ways. I think that Spirit is saying here that there may even be a little bit of a program running underneath the surface with you where you believe that love to be romantic is pain, is difficult, is star-crossed. So without being even aware of it, you may live into that sort of thing. You may even subconsciously seek out people or respond to people who you admire, you romanticize, but who in a way there's always going to be this sort of issue. I do think here that's what that's picking up, that there was a side of you, particularly maybe really moving forward in career and who you are, where you've almost felt you had to stay separate, but you're so romantic that it's hard to balance that energy without sort of having a reason. Like there's always an obstacle, there's always a reason. And the more that occurs, I feel like you're the sort of person who could potentially write amazing love songs or poetry. There's a real sense of the romanticism of things here, but Spirit is saying that that's trapping you a bit. That's making you feel caught in particular dynamics, and there is the possibility here that one of the impacts on you may be drawing people who romanticize you as well and get obsessed with you. You are the sort of person who could get that kind of energy around you. What you're looking for is the happiness, the longer term happiness with the 10 of Cups. And Spirit is saying that's possible. With 7 of Wands, you just have to have the courage to do it. It's like stepping away from the romantic story into the story that is true to you, and being able to speak about this. If you feel that somebody is putting you on a pedestal, then talk about that, because the right relationship and the right connections will appreciate that and will feel seen and will feel worked with in some way, whether it is in work or whether it's in your romantic life. So having the courage to do that, and the courage to say, romance doesn't have to be difficult. Not everything is a competition to win at. There is a little bit with the CEO archetype there where you could be feeling everything that is worth having you have to really fight for in some way. And that may well be true in whatever you do for your career or study or wherever you are in your life, but it's not necessarily true around romance. So getting more to the romantic ideal and less to the sense that there has to be a struggle, having the courage to do that and be prepared to merge with somebody more, less than being two people, you admire this person and they admire you, but there's almost a feeling like that they can't come together because of that. And even if you're in a relationship, I think that there is something in this where there's an undercurrent of it being difficult, a push-pull type energy, but it has to do with a belief that things have to be difficult. Spirit is saying that you, in your general thing, when you're not thinking about love, you are very balanced and you're very optimistic and you just go for it. So if you take the same attitude to love, then you will draw the right energy to you. But you do need to let go of these myths in a way that you have around it, because you're drawing to you people in terms of love and even potentially friendships that play into that programming, because you are so strong, because your personality is so strong, they will play into that. You are very much, as I say, the alpha. So if you have imbued your love life with a concept that it has to be difficult, it's going to be difficult. If you, however, let go of that, bring that into balance and bring that same degree of positivity in, then it's not going to be difficult and you can get to the 10 of Cups. You trap yourself and or draw other people to you who get obsessed at the moment because you're applying that programming, I think. Spirit's been quite clear about this. So let's have a look at the oracle cards that were put down to start with. And there were two, and there were different intents for this. So the first couple of cards come from the Celestial Fortune Astrology pack. So it's really looking at what astrological energies or focuses would help you get this balance, because you are always going to be both intimidating and fascinating to people, but it is not working for you in your love life in the way that it is for your career. So this is really Spirit telling us what are the focuses that are good for you at the moment to get this more in balance. Okay, so firstly you have Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a freedom-loving, gregarious, fire sign, so you are very fiery. There's nothing wrong with that. And so Spirit is definitely saying do not diminish your fire, your energy, your passion. In fact, maybe make it more about passion to draw in that energy than about the watery sort of energy of the admirer or the Knight of Cups. Maybe really looking to what is passionate may draw in the right energy for you. But you don't have to give up certain freedoms if you're worried about that, because Sagittarius likes its freedom. You don't have to do that to connect with other people. Because again, it's that fiery energy of that courage. It's finding the person that you can admire and also be with, and because you are both very comfortable in yourselves, you can be together. So I think there's a very strong thing there. It's interesting that the tarot card for Sagittarius is Temperance. So it's saying getting it into balance. The celestial body is Jupiter, so that's very positive, a sense of expansion. You are, wherever you are in your life at the moment, and even if things are difficult, you are meant to be very successful, and you will be within this lifetime. That is part of your pathway. And Jupiter is there with you, but the balance is making sure that doesn't throw your emotional life out of whack. And what Spirit is saying is there is a little bit of a revolution you need to do here. Uranus is here. That's about bringing things up and changing them, and it's an evolutionary force. The phrase around it is I evolve. So you evolve to bring that same level of confidence to all aspects of your life. And the tarot card around it is the Fool. So it's stepping out into something new, stepping out into a different way of doing things. That's all that's really necessary here. So the other pre-chosen cards that I had for you, pile one, were from the Colour Goddess card. So this is really, again, to sort of see what sort of energy around you would help you bring this balance into being. Okay, so this is giving us a little bit of extra information, pile one, because we've got firstly moss, which is about breeding, growth, reproduction. There could be, part of this could be saying that a family ultimately is something that's important here, but it could also be that it's connected to growth and building who you are and building your life and building your success. It's interesting, the moss colour is green, so it's connected to the heart, but at the moment it's a sort of like a almost browny green with the moss colouring. So I get that sense that yes, your fire energy is much more directed towards career success and so forth. You're not bringing that same vibrancy to love. So I think around that and thinking about growth on all levels would be a helpful energy to bring in. And there's something about family, legacy, ancestors around this as well too. It may well be that some of the people who've come to this reading come from very successful families, and so it's been so inculcated to you that this is what success is. You move with it really naturally, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of you have found that there's been dysfunctional relationships within your family, within, whether it's your parents or whether it's sort of extended family, because of that dynamism. I think this is a pattern, and it's recognizing that pattern. So this is about ancestry, healing the past history. And the amber is, again, a kind of, at the moment, sort of brown tinged yellow. So it's your sense of self, your solar plexus chakra is also a little bit dulled by this because of the fact that you haven't got those energies in balance. And it's interesting, that's a very similar colouring to the back of the CEO. So this is one of the reasons that I feel that it's very strongly connected maybe to a family pattern, something that you've learnt from your family, whether you're immediate or extended family. So I think that Spirit is just saying here that it is understanding what you have uniquely, even uniquely compared to your family, because you would have been successful even if you weren't born into a successful family. If that resonates for you, that you're in a successful family, it's not in a sense by accident because you're meant to be successful, but you will be successful anyway. It may in fact be the reverse for some. It may be your dynamism is actually lifting your family out of that sort of more dulled energy. And again, you feel very committed to doing that, but it's getting in the way of emotional stuff. So thinking about emotional stuff, I wanted to use the Feelings Oracle, and this is really, I think in this case, I just want to look at what feelings you would have if you start to really get that in balance, if you start to realize that being brave enough to speak the truth of this and to really explore to what degree you've sort of had programming around there needs to be things that are difficult, but it doesn't have to be difficult. So talking to a loved one, if you're with someone, about their dreams and so forth, and really getting them to focus more on them, because I think they're probably focusing a lot on you. Or if you are with someone who's a bit obsessed with you, to have the conversation to clear that energy. Or if you've been alone, to really think about that and who to talk to. What are the feelings, Spirit, that pile 1 should be focusing on and seeing, to know that they're on the right path to get this balance right for them. Okay, so this, I think, are 2 realizations about the dark side of being someone so charismatic and so successful, or on that kind of trajectory at the same time that you romanticize things. Firstly, as you start to look at all of this, you may feel overloaded. It's important then to only take on what you can handle. And so if there is a journey here for you about recalibrating how you relate and all of that sort of thing, get support, take it at the time that works for you. Don't try and solve the entire thing overnight, because this is quite a deeply ingrained energy for you. And you will find pushback from people if they start to, you're trying to shift out of this, because you have such a profound impact on people. So, and people may start to, one of the things that could happen, I'm getting, is that if you are with someone and there is this sort of pattern where they're a little bit obsessed with you, or they really kind of look up to you, if you try and balance it out, you may find that they push back and try and put more on you. So it's important to have the boundaries around that and not to feel manipulated. Some may literally be manipulating you, but I think that in many cases it's just this dynamic. But being very clear about your boundaries and saying, I will not be controlled. I'm not going to let my romanticism and this sense that, romance is about things that are difficult, control who I am and how I have a relationship. Because I feel by and large it's more that, it's more your own programming, and maybe the programming from your family or something that gives you that sense, not really necessarily the other person. I think if the other person, if you're with someone, or if someone is really kind of following you around a bit like a fan, then I think that is more about what they're picking up from you and projecting on you. It's not necessarily them trying to manipulate you. So to finish off, I also wanted to ask Spirit for a couple of affirmations for you about how to get the best out of this sort of energy in terms of how you draw people in. And I really think here it's just about understanding the presence that you have and the charisma you have, and understanding the implications of that and how you need to be very clear and have really strong boundaries. But Spirit, please give us a couple of affirmations for pile 1 so that they can get this more in balance. There's one that flipped that. Okay, so firstly, trust your heart but use your head. I think that's a really good sign of it, because you have an exceptionally sharp mind. You are meant, as I say, to be a leader. Your head is really, really fine. That's all good, but don't you live in your heart and these sort of things. Listen to your head around that. Put the same sort of approach into your love life as you do in other things in your life. That will get it into balance. And there's nothing to be afraid of. Fear is a beast with no teeth. It probably would surprise people that you have some fear around relationship. That's probably the last thing that they would think about you, pile 1, because I think they just think you're so powerful in many ways, and they are a bit intimidated. And what can happen with that is you can feel very alone, and it can be a bit frightening about reaching out. But this is saying there really is nothing to be afraid of. There is, in fact, the capacity to use that same dynamism to bring in the right person. But you have to let go of this idea you have that love is the thing that causes pain, or is difficult, or is another challenge. Not everything in life has to be the next challenge to win. You're going to win lots, pile 1. So just ease up on that and let go of the fear that's associated with it. I'm actually getting that for some of you, fear is part of what drives you more generally. It's like you get an adrenaline rush out of difficult things in work or in study or whatever it might be, or you might really like, high impact sports and that kind of thing. There's a kind of adrenaline rush you get from that, and people really admire that and get a bit intimidated by that as well too. It's another reason, if that resonates, that people don't realize that you also have this soft inner heart and this sort of trepidation around finding love. But again, adrenaline is fantastic when it works for you, but not when it doesn't. But if there's a way that you can go, okay, I'm going to leverage the adrenaline to have the conversation, that's great. But it's not it doesn't have teeth. It's not going to hurt you. So I definitely think you're one of those people that I was talking about in the introduction, where there's a kind of the dark side of charisma, because I think that you are charismatic. And it's how you balance that sort of thing, so that you can get the best out of life. I definitely think you can, and I definitely think that Spirit says that you're on the right track to do it. But it's really, the good news is it's all in your court. Once you have that realization, you work with that, it should resolve itself. You are far more in control of your life than I think many people are. But that's what you have to realize. It also is the case in love. So I hope that resonates for you, pile 1, and I hope that it is helpful. You definitely fascinate and intimidate people, but you just need to work out how to make that work for you. So if you enjoyed the reading, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if this does resonate, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Beyond that, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 2, to your reading. Over here I have some of the cards that were under the chakra placement stone that you chose to come to this reading, and these were also under there. As I said in the introduction, we're starting with archetypes to get a sense about how you might be coming across to people in a way that could either fascinate or intimidate or both. And this is really interesting. It looks to me as though people find you highly mysterious, and they're a little bit afraid of you about whether or not they're seeing who you really are. There's a sense almost of a shapeshifter about you. And the reason I say that, we've got performer, so there's something, you are probably someone who is very dramatic in some way in the way that you come across. You may literally be a performer. You may work in the performing arts, or you could be someone who is very creative and very artistic in the way that you present yourself. Life is always a show in a way. That may not be something that you necessarily want to do, but it could be something that you feel is required by the environment that you're in, maybe a work environment or something in college or friendships or community or something like that. But people feel like you're always on. You're always in performance mode. And why that could potentially, well, that fascinates them because you are very electric. You will really bring the attention if you go into a room. Even if you think, you know what, actually I'm a bit shy, and I think you may well be, the reality is your charisma, the energy you have, draws attention to you anyway. You couldn't disappear into the corner in a party, even if you wanted to. And so I feel like there's a part of you that goes, well, I'm not feeling like I really want to be in a big group in this situation, but I can put on a show. I can put on a persona. I can do that. And you're very good at it because you can shapeshift. You've worked out how to do it because there's a side of you that really just likes your own company, likes to observe the world. You're highly observational, actually. You really see what's going on. It's one of the reasons why you can do the performer thing. You can almost mimic what you're around if you need to. That's why it's a shapeshifter, chameleon type energy. But it's really about the fact that you don't want to be in a group, you don't want to belong to something, you really want to be your own person. But the irony is that you feel for some reason when dealing with others, therefore, that you have to put on a bit of a performance because people are not, for some reason in your environment, not comfortable around a loner. And what can happen and why people might be a bit afraid of you with that sort of energy is that some people, particularly maybe the people closest to you, pile 2, I don't think it matters too much with a broader social group or even a broader work group, but the people closest to you might sometimes think, who is this person? Because I get the sense of this very deep person, this person who really has knowledge and wisdom and, is really has a sense of being separate and unique and individual. But on another stand, it's like when I'm interacting with this person, I can't see them clearly. It's like they're sort of, the faces change rapidly. It's like something you might see in a video or something like that. So some people are a bit afraid, pile 2, that the dissonance between the outer persona that you can put on, this set of clothing that you can put on for a situation, and the person, this is really the people closest to you, the person they know you really are, this person who is more unique, more individual, somewhere in that they're worried that you could be playing with them. You could be just being this person when necessary and another person when necessary and so forth. And I'm not meaning by that you're being inauthentic. That's not actually what's going on. There's something different about you. It might be that you think differently to people It might be that you feel uncomfortable in social situations, as I say, and you feel like you kind of have to fit in and follow something and then perform rather than be yourself. It's not that this is not the sense at all. The loner to me feels like the really key energy here. The rest of this is then how you cope with things in the world, and this is where the fear or intimidation might come from. People may feel that it's a bit of a game to you, but that's not what's going on. So you are really different in some way. You may be different, as I say, in the way you think. You may not be neurotypical, for instance. There could be something that's very different about the way that you see the world, and it has made you feel alone, but I don't think necessarily you are uncomfortable with that. You're more uncomfortable with, how do I fit in with people who are more typical in a way. But you have perfected it far more than you think, and people do find that very interesting. They find you very interesting, and your natural energy is very strong and draws people to you. And part of it is because you're different. This is the sort of irony of this energy pile too. It's what is different, what is unique, truly unique about you is really probably what's fascinating people far more than the performance. So if they start to really see that and they're really drawn in, then they start to wonder, well, who am I seeing? So I think there is a need maybe, and this is really just in close relationships. As I say, I don't think it's a big deal with sort of broader areas. I think you're probably adapting in the way that you need to for the demands of society or a workplace or something like that. But for those close to you, you need to be able to let them see the person here more, less the person here, I think. But that's just my first feeling from those cards. So let's have a look and see what Spirit wants to tell us with Tarot about this, about a little bit more information about what it is that both intimidates people about you and fascinates people about you. Okay, so I think one of the things that makes this complicated for you, pile 2, is that you're naturally incredibly good at bringing balance to environments. Like, the strange thing about this is that I do think you're different. You are different in the way that you think. You're different in your approach. And maybe that's part of what brings the balance. But in some ways you are like the excellent mediator, the wonderful coach, the wonderful mentor, much more than you probably think you are, because you're sitting here thinking, oh, I'd rather be alone because I don't feel like I fit in here. But in a weird way, the energy that you're bringing, and what is a bit intimidating but also fascinating, is that your perspective, when linked to whatever this performance is that you do, it brings balance. It really does. You make a lot of people a lot happier than they would have otherwise been. So people are really fascinated by that. I think why it becomes an issue then if people are drawn to you in a more close thing is like it's trying to bridge that thing between who you are to other people and what you bring to other people into a more intimate situation, because it's like, this feels a bit different. I'm feeling more this person than this person here, but this person over here kind of makes us so happy. I do think that some of you may literally be performers. I think that you may be incredibly musical, incredibly eloquent in some way, just really, and it's a lovely energy. You actually give off a really lovely energy that's very connecting. But you over here, it takes it out of you. People would have no idea. You would go home after, an event and you would just stare at the wall probably, because it's like that's taken so much out of you. You've given so much to bring that balance into the energy. It's what I'm getting is that internal balance that you worry about for yourself. When you move into performance mode, that's the energy that you bring and create for others. So you create this balance, whether it's in your workplace, whether it's in friendships or whatever it might be. You create it for other people almost out of the need you have for it for yourself. But you struggle with that because you feel, one, it just takes a lot of energy out of you, but two, it sort of always feels like to even get there, to make that connection, you're going into performance mode. And as I say, sometimes people may get afraid about, is this real? Is this the real person? Or is this just the performance, the gloss and so forth? And if they had any understanding how much it took out of you, they'd know you weren't a player. They'd know that you're sort of someone who's just trying to find that balance for yourself and oddly enough giving it to everybody else while you're still seeking it yourself. Because for you, you just don't feel, you can't touch the joy at this point that everybody else gets in being around you. It's like it slips out of your fingers because you feel responsible in some way. But I don't know whether it's because you feel responsible because you think, I'm so different, I just have to fit in, and you're really underestimating what you bring to the table big time, or whether it's that your type of happiness is different to the collective happiness, and so the more energy you put into others, the less you're getting for yourself. You're draining the battery in some way. You're very brave, like you really are. And people see that as well too. Like, this is the interesting juxtaposition that happens, Paul, too. I think that at first you go into these situations, wherever it is, and because you are finding in your performance the way to connect with people, you bring this incredible benefit to others. But then as people get to know you better and maybe understand the effort for that, they really start to admire how brave you are, that you've gone into this environment, you've done it when you've been dealing with something within your personality, within, as I say, the way that maybe you process information or you look at the world, that it takes an act of bravery, and people really do admire that. I think that's the thing. I think what Spirit is saying here is that that's the trajectory you need for those closest to you. If people start to get close and you feel like they're starting to question whether this is a performance rather than real, letting them in to understand what this takes out of you and how it's difficult, and getting their support allows them to see you as brave rather than a player. So it's a really interesting energy. Let's ask Spirit for a little bit of further clarification about what this is bringing into your life and what advice they would give. I mean, I think Spirit's already starting to give advice there, but let's see what else we can get around this for you, Pile 2. Okay, so I think that Spirit is saying that you are judging yourself too harshly. You move into a feeling of something that is a lack in you, and the weird thing is that sense of lack that you have is what creates this sense of drawing people to you and the amazing benefits that you bring to other people. But you are quick to judge yourself, I think, too quick to judge yourself. And so, and because of that, you kind of never feel that emotional connection that you want to feel. You are probably trying to find someone who's like you, but as I say, that is a process, because the way that you are interacting in the world, because you feel different, makes it a slower process to get to that authentic relationship. It doesn't mean that it won't happen, and I think there's actually some signs that there is that real connection possible for you if you're looking for that, and it comes through something creative, partly the sort of performance, but also a mutual creative passion energy, and also an inspiring thing. It's like you're going to potentially, if you haven't already, meet someone who inspires you, that refills your battery, someone who gets you, who's understands and admires how brave you are, but who also provides energy to you. So I think that's a very good sign from Spirit for those that are looking for someone, that something could be coming. For everybody else, it's like saying, when you move out of that pattern of judging yourself as being lesser, when everybody else sees you as quite the opposite, then you can get the energy. It'll be self-fulfilling. You'll actually find it within yourself. It does suggest to me, though, that you do need to take time out. You need to meditate, take time out. In Myers-Briggs, if you know Myers-Briggs typology, you would be more on the introvert scale than the extrovert scale. And that's not about being shy or extroverted or life of the party. It's more that introverts gather energy from themselves and extroverts gather energy from others. So you are very much somebody who does need to find that from within and needs to find the time out, and I think may not be doing that enough at the moment. So that's part of what I think Spirit is saying with that. That allows you to let go of your emotional issues or whatever and free that up so that maybe you can have a bit more of the joy that other people have. I think it's really saying, Pile 2, that you need to be aware of how much you bring for other people, and that your difference is actually an incredible, wonderful thing. It's like a superpower. That is really beautiful in you. It's not something that you need to hide. It may be, I do get a sense for some environments and some circumstances, it's like, don't tell everybody who you are, but the people who are closest to you, then you can actually start to have the joy that you bring to others. You're highly psychic too. Like, do not underestimate how much you draw the energy of others. You are like the moon, actually. It's very interesting because you draw that energy in from others. You understand the environment. It's why you can blend. It's why you can be the chameleon. I mean, it's interesting. A werewolf is the representation in this particular tarot deck about the moon, and so that sense of shape-shifting that I got right at the beginning is there. So you are very much able to do that. The moon also reflects the light of the sun, so it's like what you're doing again is bringing out the light in others. So maybe bring out the light in yourself a bit as well too, but understand you're highly empathic, you're probably very, very intuitive, but you're too hard on yourself basically. So Spirit is saying that the only real risk, well, there's two real risks for you at the moment in the way that you fascinate and intimidate others, and one is that you may burn yourself out without even realizing how it's happening. The other is that people who want to get close to you may not be sure who you are because you're so good at this sort of broader thing, even though you don't realize it, or they may feel that there is a line you cannot cross with you. You go home, you close the door, and then nobody's allowed in. You're a bit mysterious. You're a little bit hard to get to know. So let's have a look at the oracle cards that were pre-chosen. So we're starting with astrological energy. So this in the intent of the reading was for Spirit to sort of say what astrological energies to focus on to balance this out and get the best out of it. So I think it really is about you owning who you are a bit more and like being proud of who you are. Like your difference, as I say, is a superpower. It's not a something holding you back in any way. So we've got third quarter moon and we've got the second house. So third quarter moon is all about release. So yes, releasing that energy so new energy can come in, releasing that sense that you are somehow lesser because you're not. Like the way that you can operate in the world, given that you are different in some way, is exceptional and people get so much from it. So release that energy, let out the old, use your discernment in your judgment. Don't be so hard on yourself and reflect on that. Take the time out to bring that new energy in. So that's very much, and it's interesting, the third quarter moon tarot card is judgment. So it's very much saying let go of those judgments you have about yourself. You're not seeing yourself clearly, pile two. You're just not. Other people, you know that you can do the performance and you do it very well, but it exhausts you. But what you don't realize is what that brings to other people. You feel like it's a coping strategy, but for everybody else, it's like, wow, what a revelation, this person, something in what you say or how you act really liberates and helps others. So understanding that, and if you were a coach or a mentor, and you'd be very good at it for all that you think you're different, if you were, you would actually bring people such aha moments, and you would not judge them. You would be looking for what was good in them and what they could really succeed in their potential. Do the same thing for yourself, pile two. The second house is all about both your values and also about sort of money and possessions and so forth. This very much suggests to me that understanding this skill could be something that gives you money, security, all of those sorts of things, but it's also about what you value. And maybe Spirit is saying here that one of the things that vexes you sometimes is whether this chameleon thing takes you away from what you value. But I think you just underestimate how much good you do for people. Like, I think your values are really on point. So I think it's just saying that's okay, value yourself and value what you're bringing to the table. So let's look at the colour goddess cards to see what energy Spirit would like you to focus on. Okay, so this is telling me with lilac here that this patterning came from right at the beginning, from your childhood and so forth. There's something in there where when you were not as mature, because lilac is about immaturity, when you were innocence at youth, there was something that settled this in that made you feel different. Maybe you always felt out of place at school. Maybe you hadn't developed these abilities at first. Maybe you were someone who wasn't in the cool gang at school or whatever, but you are learning and watching and observing, and you will be able to, as I say, if that's the case, or you have already started to have this impact and to work with groups, but it might have been harder for you than for others. There might also have been things around your family, around whatever conditioning you had in your family, and maybe you felt like a fish out of water in your family to some extent as well too. You were different there. There's something here. The beauty about lilac though is that it's within the color spectrum of the third eye and the crown chakra, so it connects to the moon. It connect your psychic ability will really help you here once you really start to understand what that power is that you have. And then you can move to turquoise, which is direction, point and purpose. Once you've understood what you bring to the table, because I don't think most of you have yet, but once you've understood that, you can really take a direction, both in your interpersonal relationships, the close ones, around the clarity and being more who you are and feeling that mutual energy, but also in what you could do with this. Because as I say, you could go far if you wanted to, in whatever that means to you. So I wanted to close out with a couple of other decks where I'm shuffling, because I wanted to shuffle this. This is firstly the Feelings Oracle, because I wanted to ask whatever question I thought around feelings was relevant to this, depending upon what came with the reading. So I want to look at what are the feelings that you'll go through if you start to really understand who you are, because I think most of you, other people know it, but I don't think that you know it yet. So what feelings do you go through as that happens? Oh, wow, this is lovely. Passionate, I love with every beat of my heart, and intoxicated, I release low vibrations. Once you realize, firstly, if you are looking for a love relationship or you've had difficulty in that space, by realizing who you are helps bring in that energy and brings in that passion. And that's very much picking up that Ace of Wands there, where I said if you are looking for someone, I think once you realize what you bring to the table, that will bring a similar energy to you. It doesn't have to be the same way of thinking. In fact, it could be very interesting if they were very different to you, but you allow that passion in because you're not being so hard on yourself and you're letting go the low vibrations. I do think you'd find it intoxicating. Like, I think you have no idea, Part 2, who you are. And I don't mean that in oh, you don't know who you are. I mean it in there is so much more to you than you actually realize. And I do think it's because you've been different and you felt out of step. But that's what people find fascinating. That's what people admire. And as I say, the only issues here are you really understanding that about yourself and being able to take off the performance hat when needed with interpersonal relationships to bring that sort of passion in. So let's ask Spirit for a final couple of affirmations for you, just to get you on the path that you need here, because I think there's so much you could bring to the world, and you probably already are, but I just think you just don't know. So Spirit, please give a couple of affirmations that would be really helpful for Pile 2 in getting this balance right. Okay. Show up as you are. You are all you need to be. So I do think, I have to say that I do think in certain circumstances, if what I'm picking up here is right, that there may be certain environments where you do need to do a bit of a performance, and you will know, use your discretion about that. But in terms of your close relationships, you are all you need to be. You do not have to be like other people. You do not have to be only other person centered. You are all you need to be. And let go of your past, like let it guide you, but not decide for you. So if you did go through something where you felt out of whack at home or at school, you learned a lot with that, Part 2. You really did. And that's one of the reasons why you're so good at all this stuff. So you let it be a guide, let it be a lesson, but it isn't describing you. You are so much more than you are giving yourself credit for. It's come across many times here. So I think Spirit was quite insistent. I hope you got the message, Part 2. And I hope you enjoyed the reading, and I hope it was helpful. And if so, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I'd love to hear about this in the comments if you can see how this works in your life, because I feel really like you have so much to give, and it would just be wonderful to hear that you know that. So beyond that, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 3, to your reading. So these cards over here we'll get to a bit later. They were with these cards under the chakra placement stone that you chose to come to this reading. But these are the archetype cards that I talked about in the introduction, to look at maybe what are some of the key energies that are either fascinating or intimidating about you. And there's quite a lot of intimidation here, I have to say. I think also fascination, because the level of intelligence that's coming from this is very striking. The combination of the detective energy with Scorpio. Scorpio is, in a sense, almost one of the zodiac's detectives, in the sense of going deep and really seeing what's under the surface. It's probably then connected to things like Virgo for the detail and the structure and so forth. But you are very, very, very insightful. Like, nothing gets past you, and people know this. That fascinates them as well. They're kind of a bit in awe of you, I think, because you just get to what's really going on. But it is a bit frightening as well for people. I think you've probably found in your life that your capacity to really see what's going on. I'm getting that for some of you, you may have been in a family environment where there were myths and not particularly good structures in the way things operate. You could have been in a narcissistic family and you were the scapegoated child because you were the truth teller, for instance. It's not going to be everybody, but it's just to give you an example of how having that kind of acuity into things and really understanding what's going on is really a little bit scary to people sometimes, but equally to people who don't have anything to hide, quote unquote, that can be fascinating and incredibly beguiling. There's a almost Sherlock Holmesy sort of feeling about this for you, that as I say, that sense that you really understand things. You certainly, if you wanted to have a career in some form of detective, forensic sort of environment, you'd be very, very naturally skilled in that way. But that eye, that acuity of that eye, looking at people from you really get it. You really see the patterns. And part of it with past life is that you understand the patterns of life. You understand, you can see and predict, and that's the sort of Scorpio, sort of like precognitive psychic side of things. You can see and predict what's coming because you understand what's happened before. And you may very well have brought some of these energies in from a past life, certainly with those cards, but I think it's really, you understand it. You may be very interested in one or more areas of history, the Earth's history, and or political causes or something like that, where you see how power is used. But you're like an oracle, you're like a prophet, but but it's about the fact that you see the detail, you get down to some of you may be very scientific, actually, I'm getting, that quantum physics type of level. You get down to the structure of the universe with those sorts of cards. And that is fascinating as hell to other people, but it's also scary. And I do think you probably scare quite a few people. And that may or may not be something that concerns you. It may be that if you are around people in intimate relationships and things like that who are similar to you, you just might enjoy that energy together and work together and collaborate really wonderfully. But if you're around people who don't have your acuity and there's a different reason that you want to be close to them, then you need to be aware of how to moderate that and how not to make them always feel that eye is turned on them, that they are almost under inspection when they're with you. So I think this is something you're very aware of. I think you've probably already started to work on how not to have that occur, but it's so innate to you that you may not be aware how much people feel it and how much they feel that they have to kind of play their cards close to their chest when they're around you. But they want to know what you think's coming, because they really, really rate how you see the world, how you see a situation. You'd be the sort of friend who another friend would really want the advice from, like the tell it as it is. No, don't spare the feelings, just go for what the truth is. You're the person that they would go to for that. So let's ask, but this is a tricky one, I think, pile 3, because I think you are very, very well aware of this. You could not be aware of it, because that's the nature of who you are. But it is a tricky energy because you have to be who you are. But how do you fascinate rather than intimidate, I think, is the real question here. So Spirit, give us a little bit more information about how this works for pile 3. Okay, so I think the detective energy here, which feels to me to be very sort of Queen of Swords, is connecting with Queen of Wands here. So part of you is also very charismatic. There is a charismatic energy to what you do. That's why I get that Sherlock Holmes sort of feeling, that there's sort of something quirky and different about you, very, very quick, very, very quick energy, and people are really drawn to that. They are, but they are a little bit scared of whether you're judging them. You may very much need to set up in particularly close personal relationships that sense of like this this energy is turned off, and this warmth and this collaborative energy is turned on, so that people don't feel like they're constantly being judged when you're just trying to have a conversation with them. So that energy is there, that kind of make it more about collaboration, make it more about sort of fire, creative sort of energy, less about sitting in the head and the depths. Not everybody can go to the depths like you can, Pole 3. Not everybody's comfortable there. You are, that a lot of people aren't, and being aware of that and really using fiery, bright energy will make people feel less judged. Also be aware you're very, very fast in how you think. Not everybody is as fast as that. It doesn't mean, it's not an issue about intelligence necessarily, it's just about the speed that your mind works. So you may want to pull that back a bit, because that may come across as judgment when you don't mean it. So pulling back the Ace of Swords, for instance, you will go gung-ho with something. If somebody gives you a problem, you go straight to resolution mode. And some people just want to talk about the problem for a while. And so I think it's like pull back on that energy to try and go to solutions instantly. Let that conversation occur and so forth. It brings it a little bit more in balance. It makes you a little less scary, because you will come to a conclusion and want to get moving quicker than other people. But what that does is it causes people to detach from you. It's like you might have been able to bring a really great solution for them that they could build on, but all they've heard is the kind of negative side of it when that's the case, like the things that, this might take time, you're going to have to let it grow or whatever, rather than, the better, the warmer side of it and so forth. You are naturally very generous. You're not someone who means to do this to people. You think because in your life, facing up to the truth has always been something that worked for you and made things easier and meant you could put energy where it was going to be useful, not where it wasn't. Like to you, the more you know the truth of something, even if it's unpleasant, it allows you to work out where to put your resources, where to put your time. That's not the case with everybody. So that sort of like remembering that generosity of spirit, that maybe sometimes you might see where something is going, but a friend needs to go in that direction anyway to learn the lesson, or, you might see where it could go, but anything could happen along 2 or 3 steps that shifts it, and your friend might have been doing the right thing in the end, even though your analysis was not bad to start with. It's just that something unexpected might happen. So that speed of solutions orientation, that speed of coming to a conclusion can be intimidating and can be controlling even when you don't mean it to be. But this Queen of Wands energy and this Six of Pentacles energy feels like there's a great warmth underneath everything with you. It's just, it comes from the space of, if you can see what you really believe with the patterns of life, patterns of history, things that you know of the people around you, things you know of the situation, if you can rapidly get to the most likely outcome, and potentially, as they say, prophetically, it's needing to step back and say, this is maybe on balance of probabilities what might happen, but if you're aware of all these things, maybe you then can make other decisions, and you have the generosity to then leave it to them. So it almost has a feeling like, I think quite a few of my pile 3 might be people who use divination like this. It's that ethical thing you always have to do around this, which is to say, at the end of the day, these are just energies. And I would say it about this reading as well too. These are just energies. They're meant for your contemplation, and then you make the decision. So because people are a little bit scared of how right you seem to be a lot of the time, how prophetic you seem to be, and the detail at which you can see things, and the speed at which you can see it, then they can feel judged, or they can feel they have to follow your viewpoint rather than finding their own way. So let's ask Spirit for some advice and further clarification on this for you about how to best use this energy, because there's nothing wrong with wanting to put thoughts into the field, like that's not a problem. It's just understanding that people are so drawn to you but also a little bit scared of you, I have to say. So let's see what else Spirit might advise for you. Okay, I do think that Spirit's saying that particularly with this, I'm feeling really drawn to the Queen of Wands and the Ace of Wands here. I'm thinking that Spirit is saying that for most of you, you're probably coming across as air and water with this sort of card and then with Scorpio. But there is actually a lot of fire and creativity in you. And it's somehow tapping into that. Because if you think about it, I think what Spirit is saying here, the creative force is like what comes out of chaos. It's what comes out of the void. It's the as yet unrealized thing that is an uprush of energy and so forth. It's almost the opposite energy to the meticulous, sort of almost Virgoan or as I say, sword energy of like the meticulous planning and so forth that comes from this sort of energy. But you have both. It's saying you actually have both. It's just that for whatever reason, this is the dominant way you come across or the dominant way that you are in the world. But there is something very creative in you as well. And if you tap into that creativity, you'll know that when you do that, you aren't sitting in this space. You may be sitting a bit in the Scorpio space, and you may also be sitting somewhere in kind of past life, you know, like kind of like understanding the fabric, as I say, that almost quantum physics level of the fabric of the universe. But it's allowing the potentiality of something. So this is like it's saying this allows potential rather than diagnostic. And that's how to get the balance. And if you can encourage potential in others, the people around you, then what you can bring, it feels a bit like if you could get somebody, inspire somebody to write a novel, you'd be an amazing editor. Now, this is not to say that you couldn't write a novel yourself. I think you could. It's just that it's when you bring this energy in that makes it less frightening and makes it really supportive, because that's what you want to do. You are, as I say, a very generous person and you really do get it, but it's almost like you haven't valued that as much in yourself as your sort of forensic mind. You're much more fiery than you think, but you're just much more comfortable to live in your mind, and that's what people are responding to. It may require you to take some time out to do that, to really think about it with the Hermit there, and maybe also calibrating it to whatever your spiritual purpose is, like who are you, what do you want to do spiritually, and maybe even like what you feel from past lives and what your spiritual purpose is. But it just softens the energy. It brings us to the Page of Cups as well. It's like an emotional offering to people. It's like you're saying, I only ever want to do good, and I think that's true. And now I can balance this energy a bit more to help you so that you feel that you can approach me. Because I feel like people think, oh, it's a little bit scary to approach this person, to ask for their viewpoint or whatever. Like, am I going to hear something I don't want to hear? People say, again, because I get a sense of divination here, that some people are very frightened the first time they go to a tarot reading because they're worried about what they're going to hear. But then when they go to one and they understand that it is about choice, they usually reduce that fear. So there's something in this about you softening your energy without losing the acuity to it. Then you bring peace of mind, generosity and peace of mind with the Six of Swords. You let people go on the journey that's right for them. And you can also find the people that are true to you, the people who have a similar vision and are ready to go on a journey with you. You may have felt quite alone quite a bit, I think, Pile 3, because, as I say, you do intimidate people. You fascinate them, but you intimidate them as well. And that may have made you feel, like, why is it that I'm not connecting with people as much as I would want to? But it's just because you're living in that space. That's what you're projecting. But there is this other energy that you can project as well. So I think Spirit just wants you to do that so that people admire you rather than fear you, because there is a lot to admire, and what you bring to the table is excellent. But you want to be able to bring it to the table in a collaboration and about potential, as I say, not just about diagnostic. So let's have a look at the oracle cards that were pre-chosen with this. So I'm starting with some astrology energy. What astrology energy Spirit would like you to focus on? Okay, and we've got two aspects. So I'm going to need to shuffle and see what the planets are for this. So oppositions are about where things are almost fighting against each other, and I feel there is a bit of an opposition, as I say, energy between your sort of water and air and the fiery sort of side of you. Sextile is where there's ease. So what I think we're going to find, and I'm just going to shuffle the cards and then deal out till I get 2 planets or asteroids for each, that this will be telling us a little bit more about where that tension lies, and this will be telling us about the way to move outside of that tension. So You just have to bear with me because it can take a little while to get a planet as I do this, but I think this is the way to get the energy. So we've got Uranus there and Chiron. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, then we've got Neptune. Let's move this across a bit. And Mercury. Oh, okay, all right. So in opposition, we have Uranus, which is that kind of revolutionary, evolutionary sort of energy, with Chiron, which is the wounded healer, the sort of sense of healing things. This is telling me that there is a side of you that is almost a sacred rebel. You are somebody who sees the patterns of the universe and of life, and you are always for the evolution, and that's why you go to these depths. This is why you will look into the abyss. This is why you're comfortable doing that, because you want to heal. But what's happening in this energy is that your way of healing is to be forensic and diagnose and heal. But that's not allowing others to evolve. That's the opposition operating here. So by stepping back and looking at what Mercury and Neptune sextile could give you, Neptune is that sort of psychic energy, that scorpionic energy, allowing that to be there, and it feels more watery. With Mercury, which is communicating the whole depth of what you're looking at here. And Neptune also, to me, it feels very creative. Again, it feels like that sort of, where we've got the creation, which is like coming out of fire, like a phoenix, there's also the creation that almost comes from the sea. That sort of sense, again, of that, the depths of things, and that Scorpio gives you. Communicating on that level is the easeful way to have people then move through and find their potential, rather than trying to challenge them into a different way of doing things. It's about communicating with them about the breadth of potential. So let's have a look at the colour goddess cards that were also chosen for what else Spirit would be suggesting in terms of energies that you adopt. So we've got two cards that are in the green spectrum, so very much in the heart chakra, so picking up that Page of Cups, picking up the heart around this, because I think you do really care a lot about people. It's just, as I say, your precision is scary. This is balancing with sage, and sage can be taken a number of ways. It's the colour name, but it's also, we talk about people being sage, having wisdom, and you definitely have that. This is about alchemy, solutions, and wisdom. So you are always solutions focused. You are very alchemical, very transformative, but you need to balance it over here with mint, which is daydream, fantasy, and imagination. That's the balance. It's the balance of the forensic understanding of the structure of the universe with the potentiality of creativity, fantasy, and so forth. And if you get that balance right, people won't be scared of you. They'll be drawn to you. So there are two other oracles that I wanted to use, but I was going to shuffle. So I'm shuffling the first of them, which is an oracle about feelings, because I wanted to shuffle because I wanted to ask a question specifically related to what I was seeing in the reading. So in this case, I really want to ask the feelings that you will have once you start to move out of this mind into the more creative. Like what will tell you that you're in the process of making that shift? Okay, so this is going to be transformative for you, pile 3. I think that it is always a little bit uncomfortable to move from something that you've sort of been very comfortable with doing into something that is so much full of potential. And I think what is going to happen is that you're going to really start to understand how much you've limited yourself as well, because we've got angry and unhappy. So I don't think this is saying when you feel this response, it doesn't mean you're doing the wrong thing. It means that you're really understanding that there is so much more that you can bring to this than just that not diagnosis type of thing. So, but you won't combust and you will rise. This is a process of evolution for you as well too. It might be that you feel with some people, if you start to try and move into this, that people push back and they only want that diagnosis. Or you may feel, oh, now I understand why I felt alone quite often. Why have people unfairly seen me as someone to be afraid of? There might be a process with some of you and with some close relationships where you feel like you've been unfairly judged, that people have thought you were judging them when you weren't. So there could be that as well that you're going through. But this is all the sign Spirit is saying, when you move through that energy, that you're coming into something where you are more balanced and where you can draw people more to you in a way where they, as I say, admire you rather than they're frightened of you. So that does look like there's a little bit of self-revelation that's going to occur with this, but you are able to do this. So this is the other thing. Some people getting angry and unhappy would kind of balk and would pull back, and we wouldn't be able, Spirit wouldn't be able to sort of work with them. You will be able to do that because you are able to look at these things. But I think it may surprise you when you go through this how much you've dimmed your own light and how much people have misunderstood you. But that's, you have to see that before you get to the point of rising. So on that, I'm going to ask Spirit for a couple of affirmations for you for going through this process so that you come out of it with that balance and people are in awe of you rather than frightened of you and drawn to you for all that you can give and your great generosity of spirit, and they understand you better and they don't judge you as this scary person. So what affirmations, Spirit, would you want to give pile 3? So firstly, show up as you are all you need to be. That affirmation turned up for another reading here, so there might be some connection if you've gone to more than one reading. But I think that that's true. Show up as you are, but all as you are, not just the person who solves all the problems and sees all the patterns. There's more in your kit bag, and be comfortable with that. This is not meant to be, I think, about you thinking you've done something wrong. You haven't done anything wrong, but you've been misunderstood, and you just need to go through that process and reaffirm who you are in the fullness of that. And it says, when you stop being normal, you see how amazing you are. So I think you've got into a pattern of this. This is what people expect of you. So it's kind of like you might have, people always come to you for the solutions, but when you need support, where are they? Or people always come to you to diagnose a problem, to fix something, but they're not sort of spending fun time with you as well. And you're feeling like you've got caught in a kind of rut. So once you stop being just caught into that and you open up the potential of who you are, and I do think for many of there's something creative about that, you will see how amazing you are, because you are. Like that is a powerful energy that you have. But because it's powerful, it's also something that can be quite intimidating, so and isolating. And I think that really epitomizes why I wanted to do these readings, because I think that's people who are really fascinating and intimidating to others are often a bit alone. And there's been a little bit of that in all these readings. I kind of expected that. But understanding those dynamics and getting it into balance, that's when you become really aware of how amazing you are. So I hope that resonates for you, pile 3, and I hope it's helpful. You're certainly the sort of person who will be able to diagnose whether or not this is helpful or not, and take from it what works for you, leave the rest, as would always be the case. I hope you enjoyed the reading, and if so, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I'd love to hear about it in the comments if this does resonate for you, if you can see what you can do, how being creative and more open can shift some of these energies for you without losing any of that incredible acuity and brilliance of mind that you have. Other than that, I hope to see you in future readings.